The year was 1878, and the autumn wind carried more than just the scent of pine and sagebrush across the Wyoming Territory. It carried the hopes of a woman who had sold everything she owned for a single train ticket west. Catherine Morrison stood alone on the platform of Iron Creek Station, her gloved hands white-knuckled around the handle of a battered leather valise, the last thing her father had given her before the fever took him. 6 months ago, she had been the daughter of a respected literature professor in Boston. Now she was a mail-order bride who had traveled 2,000 miles to marry a man she had never met. The platform was nearly empty in the late afternoon light. A few cowboys leaned against the sun-bleached station house, their curious eyes tracking her movements. A woman in calico hurried past with 2 children in tow. No one approached. No one held a sign with her name. Kate smoothed down her navy traveling dress, the best she still owned, and tried to steady her breathing. The letter had been so promising. Cornelius Pike, proprietor of Pike's Trading Post, seeking an educated Eastern lady for matrimony and companionship. Passage paid. A new life in the wide open spaces of the West. She had answered because she had no choice. The creditors had already taken the house. Her father's books sold to pay the funeral expenses. Her mother's china gone to settle medical debts. The small inheritance that should have lasted years vanished in 3 months of desperate attempts to keep her head above water. The advertisement had seemed like salvation, or at least survival. Kate picked up her valise and walked toward the main street. Iron Creek was smaller than she had imagined, a wide dirt road lined with false-fronted buildings that looked like stage sets waiting for actors. Men in dusty hats and boots moved with purpose. Women in practical dresses carried baskets. Everyone looked weathered by sun and wind. Pike's Trading Post stood in the center of town, a 2-story structure with large windows displaying tools, fabrics, and household goods. Kate paused outside, gathering her courage. Through the glass, she could see a thin man behind the counter, his receding hairline catching the lamplight. The bell above the door jangled as she entered. Cornelius Pike looked up from his ledger. His eyes, small and calculating, swept over her with the same expression he might use to evaluate livestock. He did not smile. "You must be Miss Morrison," he said. His voice was flat businesslike. "Mr. Pike?" Kate set down her valise and extended her hand. "I received your telegram last week. Thank you for arranging my passage." He did not take her hand. Instead, he came around the counter, wiping his palms on his apron. His handshake, when it finally came, was limp and brief. "There has been a change of plans," he said. The words hit Kate like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of managing her father's household through declining health had taught her not to show weakness. "What kind of change? My sister arrived from St. Louis last month, unexpectedly. She is keeping house for me now. I no longer require a wife." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Kate's feet, but she remained standing. "Mr. Pike, we corresponded for 3 months. You assured me of a home here. I sold everything to come." He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to change his position. "I am sorry for your troubles, Miss Morrison, but circumstances change. I have arranged a room for you at the boarding house for tonight. Tomorrow you can take the train back east. I will cover the fare, of course." "Back to what?" Kate's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled. "I have nothing to return to. No home. No family, no prospects." "That is unfortunate, but not my concern." His tone had turned cold. "I advertised for a wife when I needed one. I no longer need one. Many would consider a free ticket home generous under the circumstances." Before Kate could respond, the door opened behind her. A woman entered, tall and angular, her dark hair pulled back so severely it stretched the skin at her temples. She wore black silk, expensive and out of place in this frontier town. "Is this her Cornelius?" The woman's voice dripped with disdain. "Yes, Ida." Miss Morrison was just leaving. Ida Pike circled Kate like a predator examining wounded prey. "A mail-order bride. How utterly common. You are better off without this arrangement, Cornelius." "Can you imagine what the town would say?" Kate felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she refused to drop her gaze. "Mrs. Pike, your brother extended an offer of marriage. I accepted in good faith and traveled across the country based on his word. I expect him to honor his commitment." Ida laughed, sharp and bitter. "Honor? My dear, you are merchandise that was ordered and then canceled. You have no claim here." The cruelty of the words stung worse than the rejection itself. Kate picked up her valise, her chin lifting with the last shreds of her dignity. "You are correct, Mrs. Pike. I have no claim, but neither do I have any intention of accepting charity from a man without honor." She turned toward the door, unsure where she would go or what she would do, knowing only that she could not remain in that room another moment. The bell jangled again as the door swung open. The man who filled the doorway was unlike anyone Kate had seen in Boston. He stood well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered and lean-waisted, dressed in worn denim and a leather vest. His dark hat was pushed back, revealing a sun-bronzed face and eyes the color of a clear Wyoming sky. A scar ran along his left jaw, white against his tan. His hands, resting on the doorframe, were scarred and calloused from hard work. "Pike," he said, his voice deep and measured. "I need wire cutters and 20 pounds of nails. The ones you sold me last month are already rusted through." He stopped when he saw Kate, his eyes moving from her face to the valise in her hand to the rigid postures of the Pike siblings. "Did I interrupt something?" Cornelius stepped forward, clearly eager for the distraction. "Not at all, Bridger. Just concluding some business. I will get your order ready." But Matthew Bridger did not move. His gaze had settled on Kate, taking in the brightness in her eyes that spoke of unshed tears, the proud set of her shoulders, despite obvious distress. "You are the mail-order bride," he said. It was not a question. Kate winced at the blunt description, but nodded. "I was under that impression, yes." Ida Pike stepped forward, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Mr. Bridger, this unfortunate woman traveled all this way under a misunderstanding. My brother has kindly offered to pay her return passage." Matt's jaw tightened. He looked at Cornelius with an expression that made the shopkeeper step back. "You brought her all the way from where—" He directed the question to Kate. "Boston. All the way from Boston." Matt repeated, his voice quiet but carrying an edge that filled the room. "Based on your promise of marriage, and now you are sending her back." "My circumstances changed," Cornelius said, his voice taking on a wheedling quality. "Surely you understand. A man must do what is best for his family." "I understand that a man's word should mean something." Matt turned to Kate. "Miss Morrison, are you still interested in remaining in Iron Creek?" The question surprised her. "I came here with that intention. Then I would like to offer an alternative to returning east." He removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair. "My housekeeper left 2 weeks ago to care for her sick mother in Kansas. My ranch needs someone to manage the household. I am offering you that position with fair wages, 3 months. If at the end of that time you wish to return east, I will pay your fare. If you choose to stay, you will have had time to meet other prospects and decide your future." Kate stared at him, searching his face for deceit or ulterior motive. She found only straightforward honesty in his steady gaze. "You would hire me as your housekeeper without references. You were acceptable as Harrington's wife without him meeting you first. I figure that is reference enough for keeping house." A faint smile touched his lips. "Besides, I am a fair judge of character, Miss Morrison. You strike me as someone who does not give up easily." Cornelius sputtered. "Now see here, Bridger, you cannot just take her." "I believe Miss Morrison can make her own decisions." Matt still did not look at Pike. "What do you say?" Kate's mind raced. The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. It would give her time breathing room to assess her options and learn about this territory before committing herself to anything permanent. And this man, while intimidating in his size and presence, had just stood up for her when no one else would. "I accept your offer, Mr. Bridger," she said firmly, "though I should warn you that my cooking skills are limited to basics." His smile widened, transforming his stern features. "We will not starve Miss Morrison. The important thing is that you will have a fair chance here." He picked up her valise before she could protest. "My wagon is outside. We should go before we lose the light." As they walked toward the door, Ida's voice rang out behind them. "You will regret this, Mr. Bridger, taking another man's intended bride. The town will talk." Matt paused in the doorway and turned back. His expression was mild, but his eyes were cold. "They will say Matthew Bridger gave shelter to a woman in need." "Let them talk about that, Mrs. Pike." The wagon ride out of town was silent at first. Kate sat on the bench seat beside Matt, acutely aware of the solid presence of him, the easy way he handled the reins, the strength in his work-roughened hands. The afternoon sun slanted across the landscape, painting the sagebrush gold and casting long shadows from the distant mountains. After a mile, Matt pulled the wagon to a stop beside a small creek. He climbed down and came around to help Kate, his hands steady at her waist as he lifted her to the ground. "We should let Thunder drink," he said, nodding toward the horse. He pulled a tin cup from the wagon bed, filled it from the creek, and offered it to Kate. "You as well. The ride to the ranch is another hour." The water was cold and sweet. Kate drank gratefully, watching Matt tend to the horse with practiced efficiency. When he returned, she spoke the question that had been building since they left town. "Why did you help me?" Matt leaned against the wagon wheel, his eyes on the distant mountains. "Because I hate a man who breaks his word. Pike made you a promise. He should have honored it. You did not have to offer me employment." "No," he agreed. "But my ranch does need a housekeeper, and you need somewhere safe to land." Seemed like a practical solution for both of us. "I will work hard," Kate promised. "You will not regret this." He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "I do not think I will, Miss Morrison." As they continued the journey, Matt began to speak, his voice low and steady, telling her about the ranch. He ran 8,000 acres with the help of a foreman named Sam Crowley and 10 ranch hands. They raised cattle and horses. The work was hard but honest. The land was beautiful but unforgiving. "You will meet Sam and his wife Rose when we arrive," Matt said. "Sam has been with me since before my father died. He is a good man, fair and loyal. Rose is the same. They live in a cabin on the property with their 2 grown sons who also work the ranch." "Do you have family?" Kate asked. A shadow crossed his face. "My father passed 5 years ago, my mother last year. I have no siblings." "I am sorry. I lost my father 6 months ago." Matt nodded, understanding passing between them without need for more words. They had both known loss, both understood the weight of being alone. As the sun touched the western peaks, the ranch came into view. Kate drew in her breath at the sight. The main house was a substantial 2-story structure built of timber and stone, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings dotted the property, and in the distance a large barn stood watch over corrals filled with horses. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. Pride flickered across Matt's features. "My father started with nothing but 100 acres and determination. When he died, he left me 5,000 acres and the best cattle bloodlines in Wyoming territory." He guided the wagon toward the house. "It is a good life, demanding but good." An older man emerged from the barn as they approached. He was perhaps 60, with gray hair and a sun-lined face that spoke of decades in the sun. His eyes, sharp and assessing, moved from Matt to Kate. "Sam, this is Miss Catherine Morrison," Matt said as he helped Kate down from the wagon. "She will be keeping house for us. Miss Morrison, this is Sam Crowley, my foreman." Sam's handshake was firm, his calloused palm rough against hers. "Ma'am?" His voice was gruff, but not unkind. "Rose will want to meet you. She is up at the house." The interior of the house was spacious but showed clear signs of bachelor living. Dishes were stacked in the kitchen sink. Boots had been discarded by the door. A thin layer of dust covered most surfaces. But beneath the neglect, Kate could see quality. Good furniture, family photographs on the mantel, handmade quilts folded on the backs of chairs. A woman appeared from the back of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Rose Crowley was perhaps 55, with kind eyes and capable hands. Her smile when she saw Kate was genuine and warm. "Miss Morrison," she said, coming forward. "Welcome. Matt told us you might be coming." "He did." Kate glanced at Matt in surprise. Matt had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I rode out this morning when I heard the train had arrived. Thought it best to have a contingency plan if things with Pike went badly." "Smart man," Rose said. "Now, Miss Morrison, let me show you to your room. You must be exhausted." The bedroom Rose led her to was surprisingly large, with a 4-poster bed, a chest of drawers, and a small writing desk beneath a window that overlooked the mountains. The linens, while rumpled, appeared clean. "I will let you settle in," Rose said. "Supper is usually at 6, but do not worry about cooking tonight. I have stew on the stove. Tomorrow you can start fresh." After Rose left, Kate sank onto the bed, the events of the day catching up with her. She had arrived expecting to be married by nightfall. Instead, she found herself employed as a housekeeper to one of the most formidable men she had ever encountered. Yet, there was something about Matthew Bridger that inspired trust. Despite his size and stern demeanor, he had treated her with respect, had offered her a chance when she had none, had stood up for her against Pike without asking for anything in return. Kate unpacked her few belongings, changed into a simpler dress, and tied an apron around her waist. Whatever else happened, she was determined to earn her place here. In the kitchen, she found Rose stirring the stew. The older woman smiled when Kate entered. "You do not have to help tonight, dear." "I want to," Kate said. "It will help me learn where everything is." Together, they set the table for 12. The ranch hands filed in as the sun set, removing their hats and washing their hands at the pump sink. They were polite but wary, these rough men, unused to having a woman in the house. Matt entered last, his hair damp from washing. He took a seat at the head of the table and bowed his head. The blessing he spoke was simple and sincere, thanking God for the food, the work, and safe travels for those who had journeyed far. When he said amen, Kate realized he meant her. The meal passed with quiet conversation. The men spoke of cattle and fences, of weather and work. Kate listened, learning the rhythms of this new world. She noticed how they deferred to Matt, how his quiet authority commanded respect without demanding it. After the meal, as the men dispersed to the bunkhouse, Matt helped Kate and Rose clear the dishes. "You did not have to help me," Kate said. "I am the housekeeper." "And I was raised to clean up after myself," Matt replied. "My mother would haunt me if I forgot my manners." It was the first hint of humor she had heard from him, and it made her smile. Later, as Kate stood on the porch in the cool evening air, Matt emerged from the barn carrying a lantern. He climbed the porch steps and stood beside her, both of them looking out at the darkening landscape. "I usually make a round of the property before turning in," he said. "Will you be all right here?" "Of course, I have plenty to occupy myself." He nodded but did not immediately leave. After a moment he spoke again, his voice quieter now. "You handled yourself well today, with Pike. That took courage. I had no choice but to handle it." "There is always a choice," Matt said. "You chose to stand with dignity. That matters." He handed her a wool blanket that had been draped over the porch rail. "Nights here get cold. You are not used to the altitude yet." The gesture, small and thoughtful, touched Kate more than she expected. "Thank you, Matt. Welcome to Iron Creek, Kate." He touched the brim of his hat and disappeared into the darkness, his lantern, a bobbing point of light, moving across the property. Kate wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and watched until the light disappeared. For the first time since her father died, she felt something other than fear and desperation. She felt possibility. Miles away in the dim back room of Pike's trading post, Cornelius sat across from a hard-faced man who smelled of whiskey and violence. Victor Crane had the look of someone who had seen too much death and caused more of his own. His eyes, flat and cold, regarded Cornelius with barely concealed contempt. "You want me to scare Bridger," Vic said. It was not a question. "I want you to make him understand that taking what belongs to me has consequences." Vic laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "The girl did not belong to you, Pike. You rejected her." "That is beside the point." Cornelius leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Bridger has the best grazing land in the territory. I want it. If he were to find himself unable to manage the ranch, if his cattle were to go missing, if his operation were to fail, I could purchase the land at a fraction of its worth. And the girl is leverage, nothing more." Vic pulled a cheroot from his pocket and lit it, the match flame casting grotesque shadows on his scarred face. "You know Bridger and I have history. I heard you served together in the war." "Served is a generous word." Vic exhaled smoke. "He killed my brother at Shiloh, shot him in the back during a retreat. Then this should be personal for you as well as profitable." Vic stood his chair, scraping against the floor. "It will cost you $500. Half now, half when Bridger is broken." Cornelius counted out the bills with shaking hands. "How soon can you start?" "Already started," Vic said, pocketing the money. "I have been watching his ranch for 2 days. I know his patterns, his weaknesses." He paused at the door, his smile cruel in the lamplight. "And now he has a new weakness, a pretty one from Boston who does not know how dangerous this country can be." After Vic left, Cornelius sat alone in the darkening room, already half regretting the deal he had made. But the gambling debts were real. The creditors were not patient. And Bridger's land represented the only path to salvation he could see. He poured himself a whiskey and tried not to think about the girl's face when he had rejected her, tried not to remember the quiet dignity in her voice when she called him a man without honor. The whiskey burned going down, but it could not burn away the shame. At Bridger Ranch, Kate lay awake in her new bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Wyoming night. Coyotes called in the distance. The wind whispered through the pines. Somewhere below, a horse whinnied softly. Through her window, she could see Matt's tall figure moving across the yard, still checking on his land, his livestock, his responsibilities. There was something reassuring about his vigilance, his clear commitment to protecting what was his. Kate pulled the blanket he had given her closer and allowed herself a small smile. The day had not gone as planned, not even remotely. But perhaps Providence had a different path in mind for her. Perhaps rejection had been redirection all along. With that thought warming her more than any blanket could, Catherine Morrison closed her eyes and slept the deep sleep of someone who had survived the worst and was ready to face whatever came next. Outside, Matthew Bridger made his final circuit of the property, unaware that in offering shelter to a desperate woman, he had set in motion events that would test everything he believed about honor, justice, and the unexpected places where love could take root. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and indifferent, as the players took their positions for a drama that would define them all. The first week at Bridger Ranch passed in a blur of discovery and hard work. Kate rose each morning before dawn, the cold mountain air shocking her awake as she dressed by lamplight. The kitchen became her domain, a place where she could prove her worth with every biscuit that emerged golden from the oven, every pot of coffee that drew satisfied nods from weather-beaten cowboys. The ranch hands, initially wary of this educated woman from the East, began to warm to her presence. She learned their names, their preferences, their stories. There was young Will Peterson, barely 19, who had come west to escape the crowded streets of Philadelphia. There was Charlie Red Cloud, half Arapaho, whose quiet wisdom reminded her of her father. There was Old Tom, who had ridden with Matt's father and still spoke of those days with reverence. Rose Crowley became her teacher in the practical matters that Boston had never prepared her for. How to bake bread at high altitude, how to preserve meat in the smokehouse, how to read the sky for coming weather, and, on the third day, how to handle a rifle. They stood behind the barn targets propped against hay bales. Rose demonstrated the proper stance, the way to breathe, before pulling the trigger, the patience required for accuracy. "Out here," Rose said, her voice matter-of-fact, "a woman needs to know how to protect herself. The law is a day's ride away. Sometimes you are all that stands between safety and danger." Kate's first shots went wide, the recoil startling her. But she persisted, remembering her father's words about the dignity of competence. By the end of the session, she could hit the target more often than not. Matt watched from the corral, his expression unreadable. That evening, as she prepared supper, he spoke quietly. "Rose says you are a quick learner with the rifle. I had a good teacher." "Still," he said, and something in his voice made her look up. "I hope you never need to use those skills." But the hope was short-lived. On the seventh night, Kate woke to the sound of horses moving fast, and Sam's voice raised in alarm. She threw on her robe and rushed to the window. In the moonlight, she could see riders disappearing into the darkness, moving too quickly for any legitimate purpose. By the time she reached the kitchen, Matt was already dressed, his gun belt buckled, his face grim in the lamplight. "Rustlers," Sam said from the doorway. "Took at least 30 head from the north pasture. Fresh tracks heading toward Blackwater Canyon." Matt's jaw tightened. "Get them in. We ride in 15 minutes. "Matt," Kate said, but he was already moving. He paused at the door, turned back. For a moment their eyes met, and she saw something flicker in his expression. Concern, perhaps, or reluctance to leave. "Stay inside," he said. "Lock the doors. Rose will be here within the hour." Then he was gone, and Kate was left standing in the kitchen, heart pounding, wondering if she would see him alive again. They returned at dawn. Kate saw them from the kitchen window, 6 men on exhausted horses, Matt in the lead. Even from a distance, she could see the dark stains spreading across his shirt, the way he held himself too carefully in the saddle. She met them at the porch, her medical supplies already gathered. Years of caring for her ailing father had taught her to recognize the signs of injury, to act quickly and without panic. "He took a bullet," Sam said, helping Matt down from his horse. "Grazed the ribs. Could have been worse." Matt tried to wave them off. "It is nothing, just a scratch." "Inside," Kate commanded, her voice brooking no argument. "Now." In the kitchen, she cut away his shirt with steady hands. The wound was indeed a graze, the bullet having carved a furrow across his left ribs without penetrating. But it was deep enough to bleed heavily, and the edges were already showing signs of inflammation. "This will hurt," she warned, reaching for the whiskey. Matt gritted his teeth as she cleaned the wound, his hands gripping the edge of the table. She worked with efficient gentleness, washing away blood and dirt, checking for debris, finally applying a honey-based salve her grandmother had sworn by. "Where did you learn to do this?" Matt asked through clenched teeth. "My grandmother was a midwife and healer. She taught me the basics before she died, and I cared for my father during his final illness. I learned more than I ever wanted to know about tending the sick and injured." Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped clean bandages around his torso, her fingers unavoidably brushing against the warm skin of his back, the hard muscle of his chest. She was acutely aware of his nearness, the scent of him beneath the copper tang of blood. Leather and sage and something indefinably masculine. "Did you catch them?" she asked, focusing on the bandage to steady herself. "One of them. Shot him in the leg. The others got away with the cattle." Matt's voice was tight with frustration. "But I recognized one of the riders. Works for Vic Crane." Sam, standing in the doorway, spoke grimly. "Crane was in the war. Same unit as Matt. They have history." Kate looked up sharply. "What kind of history?" Matt's expression darkened. "The kind that does not end well. His brother died at Shiloh, under my command. Vic has blamed me ever since, even though it was war and men died on both sides. And now he is working for someone, Sam added. Someone who wants to hurt this ranch, Kate finished, tying off the bandage. Pike. Both men looked at her in surprise. It has to be, she continued, her mind working through the logic. He is the only one with a grudge against Matt, and he struck me as the type of man who would hire others to do his dirty work. Matt stood carefully testing the tightness of the bandage. If Pike is behind this, we need proof. The law will not move without it. Kate met his eyes. Then we need to get proof. I could go into town. Listen, ask questions. People talk around women, especially women they think are harmless. Absolutely not, Matt said immediately. Too dangerous. More dangerous than doing nothing while they steal your cattle and shoot at you in the dark. Kate's voice was sharp. I am not asking your permission, Matt. I am telling you what I intend to do. For a long moment they stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. She has a point, boss, and Rose could go with her. 2 women shopping would attract less attention than you riding into town right now. Matt's hands flexed at his sides. I do not like it. You do not have to like it, Kate said quietly. You just have to trust me. Something shifted in his expression. Trust was not easy for him, she realized. Perhaps the war had taught him that. Perhaps losing his fiancée to Pike had reinforced the lesson, but slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. Rose goes with you. You stay together. And if there is any trouble, any at all, you leave immediately. 2 days later, Matt took Kate to a place he had never shown anyone outside his family. They rode for an hour, following a narrow trail that wound through pine forest and across meadows dotted with wildflowers. Finally, they emerged beside a creek, hidden in a small canyon, its water crystal clear as it tumbled over smooth stones. My mother loved this place, Matt said, helping Kate down from her horse. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. She would come here to think, to read. After she died, I have been coming here when I need peace. They sat on a flat rock beside the water, the afternoon sun warm on their faces. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled with the music of moving water and wind in the pines. Tell me about her, Kate said finally. Your mother. Matt's expression softened in a way she had never seen. She was a teacher before she married my father, educated like you. She brought books with her when they came west. Taught me to read from those books. Shakespeare, Dickens, poetry. He smiled slightly. My father used to joke that she married beneath her station, but anyone could see they loved each other. How did she die? Fever, last winter. It came on fast. By the time we got the doctor here, it was too late. His voice roughened. She made me promise to keep the ranch going, to build something good here, to not let grief turn me bitter. Kate reached out her hand, finding his. I think she would be proud of what you have built. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. And your father? What was he like? So she told him. About the modest professor who had filled their small Boston home with books and ideas. About his love of literature and his belief in the power of education. About his slow decline and her desperate attempts to save him, to pay the medical bills, to hold on to their home. In the end, I failed, she said, the old pain still sharp. I could not save him. Could not save anything. You saved yourself, Matt said quietly. That took more courage than you know. The words, simple and sincere, touched something deep inside her. She looked at their joined hands, at the strength in his scarred fingers, and felt something shift in her chest. Matt, she began, but he spoke at the same time. Kate, I need to tell you something. She waited, watching shadows move across his face. I was engaged once, 3 years ago. Her name was Margaret. He stared at the water as if it held answers. I went to war when I was barely 19. Came back 4 years later, a different man. Harder. Quieter. She said I frightened her. That the boy she had loved was gone. 2 months after I returned, she married Cornelius Pike. Kate drew in a sharp breath. Pike was your fiancé's husband. Yes, and he knows that every time he sees me, I am reminded of what I lost, what the war took from me. His voice was steady, but she could hear the old hurt beneath. That is why he hates me. Not because I did anything to him, but because my very existence reminds him that she settled, that she chose safety over the man she claimed to love. I am sorry, Kate whispered. Matt turned to her, his gaze intense and searching. I am not. Not anymore. Because if she had waited, if we had married, I would never have been standing in Pike's store the day you arrived, and that would have been the greater loss. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Kate's heart hammered in her chest as Matt lifted his free hand to her cheek, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. You asked me why I helped you that day. The truth is, I saw you standing there with your pride intact despite your fear, and something in me recognized something in you. Strength, resilience, the refusal to be broken. Before Kate could respond, before she could examine the warmth flooding through her at his words, the sound of rapid hoofbeats shattered the moment. They pulled apart as Sam appeared on the trail, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Boss," he called, his face grim, "you need to come back, now." The ride back to the ranch was tense and silent. As they crested the final rise, Kate saw smoke rising from the direction of the barn, her stomach clenched with dread. But it was not the barn burning. It was a warning. Someone had set fire to a hayrick near the corral, close enough to threaten, but not close enough to do real damage. A message written in smoke and fear. The hands had already put out the flames. No real harm done except to nerves already stretched thin. "Found this nailed to the barn door," Sam said, handing Matt a piece of paper. Matt read it, his jaw tightening with each word. When he finished, he crumpled it in his fist. "What does it say?" Kate asked. "Leave now or lose everything," Matt quoted, signed with a V. "Vic Crane," Sam said unnecessarily. That evening, Kate went into town with Rose as planned. They moved through the general store, the milliner's shop, the dry goods emporium, listening to the gossip that flowed like water. And everywhere they went, Ida Pike's poison had spread before them. "Shameless," one woman whispered, not quite quietly enough, taking up with Bridger when her intended rejected her. "Mail-order brides are little better than prostitutes," another said primly, "selling themselves to strangers." Rose's hand tightened on Kate's arm, but Kate kept her composure. She had faced worse in Boston when the creditors came calling. She could face this. It was at the general store, pretending to examine fabric, that they overheard the most valuable information. Ida Pike was there holding court with 3 other women. "My brother is beside himself with worry," Ida said, her voice dripping false concern. "All this violence at the Bridger Ranch, cattle stolen, fires. It is only a matter of time before someone is killed." "Does he know who is behind it?" one of the women asked. "He has his suspicions. But without proof, what can be done?" Kate stepped around the shelf, her voice calm and clear. "Mrs. Pike, what a surprise to see you here." Ida's face flushed. The other women looked between them with barely concealed excitement. "Miss Morrison," Ida said coldly, "or should I say, Miss Bridger's housekeeper." "Miss Morrison will do, since I am not married. Unlike yourself, I have not yet found a man worth committing to." The barb hit home. Ida's eyes narrowed. "How very particular of you. Though I suppose when one has been rejected by one man, one must be more careful in choosing the next." Before Kate could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "That is quite enough, Mrs. Pike." An older man stepped forward, his time-worn face kind beneath a shock of white hair. He wore a doctor's bag slung over his shoulder and carried himself with quiet authority. "Dr. Blackwood," Ida said, her voice losing some of its venom. "Miss Morrison is new to our community, Doctor," Blackwood continued, "and in my observation, she has conducted herself with nothing but dignity and grace, which is more than can be said for those who spread malicious gossip." One of the other women had the grace to look ashamed. Ida, however, merely sniffed and turned away. Outside, Dr. Blackwood walked with Kate and Rose toward their wagon. "Thank you," Kate said. "You did not have to do that." "I did, actually," the doctor replied. "I have lived in Iron Creek for 30 years. Long enough to know a good person when I see one, and long enough to know when something rotten is happening." He glanced around, ensuring they were not overheard. "Cornelius Pike owes money all over this territory, gambling debts mostly. Last month, a man came through from Cheyenne looking for him. A creditor who was not pleased to be kept waiting." "How much does he owe?" Rose asked. "Enough that if his creditors all demanded payment at once, he would be ruined. The only asset of value he has is the trading post, but that is mortgaged to the hilt." Dr. Blackwood's eyes were grave. "A man that desperate will do desperate things." "Like hire someone to destroy a competitor," Kate said quietly. "I cannot prove it. But I know Matt Bridger is an honorable man, and I know Pike is not. If there is anything I can do to help, you need only ask." That night, Kate shared everything with Matt. They sat at the kitchen table, the house quiet around them, lamplight casting shadows on the walls. "Blackwood is right," Matt said. "Pike is desperate, which makes him dangerous." Kate reached across the table, her hand covering his. "Then we need to be more careful, but we also need to be smarter." He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through hers. "You do not have to be part of this fight, Kate. This is my battle." "Is it?" She met his eyes steadily. "Because it seems to me that the moment you offered me shelter, the moment I accepted this, became our battle. I am not leaving Matt, not when things get hard. That is not who I am." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch sending warmth through her entire body. "I know. That is what frightens me. Not for myself, but for you." Before she could respond, glass shattered in the front room. They were on their feet instantly, Matt's hand going to his gun. Through the broken window they could see flames flickering. "They threw a torch," Sam's voice called from outside. "But it landed in the dirt. No damage." Matt and Kate rushed outside. The torch lay guttering in the front yard, its flames already dying. But the message was clear. The next one might not miss. Around them ranch hands poured from the bunkhouse, armed and angry. In the distance, Kate could hear the thunder of retreating hooves. "How many?" Matt asked. "At least 8, Sam replied. "Maybe more. They came from 3 sides, coordinated." Matt's expression was grim. "They are getting bolder. Next time they might do real damage." Kate stood beside him, her heart pounding, but her resolve firm. She had come west expecting marriage to a stranger. Instead, she had found something more dangerous and more precious. A place worth fighting for, people worth standing beside, and a man worth believing in. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, "we ride to Cheyenne. We find the marshal. We end this before someone gets killed." Matt looked down at her, and in the firelight, she saw respect mixed with something deeper, something that made her breath catch. "Together," he said. "Together," she agreed. And standing there in the darkness with smoke in the air and danger pressing in close, Kate knew that whatever came next, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The ride to Cheyenne took most of the morning. Matt and Kate traveled with Sam and 2 of the most trusted ranch hands, all armed, all watchful. The 20 miles passed in tense silence, each of them scanning the surrounding hills for signs of ambush. Marshal Thomas Webb's office sat on the main street of Cheyenne, a sturdy brick building that spoke of federal authority in a territory still finding its feet. Webb himself was a man in his mid-40s with steel-gray eyes and the battle-scarred look of someone who had seen too much violence and grown weary of it. He listened to their story without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Matt finished, Webb leaned back in his chair and studied them both. "You are asking me to move against Cornelius Pike, a respected businessman based on the confession of a captured rustler and circumstantial evidence." "The evidence is not that circumstantial," Kate interjected. "Pike has motive. He owes significant gambling debts. He wants Matt's land. And Vic Crane, who has a personal vendetta against Matt, is leading the attacks." Webb's eyes sharpened with interest. "You are well informed, Miss Morrison." "I make it my business to be informed when people I care about are in danger." The marshal glanced at Matt, something knowing in his expression. "Pike does have influence in Iron Creek. The territorial judge is his cousin. Several town council members owe him money. Moving against him without ironclad proof would be political suicide." "So you will do nothing." Matt's voice was flat. "I did not say that." Webb stood and moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "I said I need better proof, which means we need to catch Crane in the act or we need someone from Pike's organization to turn witness." "And how do you suggest we do that?" Sam asked. Webb turned back to them. "You keep doing exactly what you have been doing. Defend your property. Document every attack. Save every threatening note. Meanwhile, I will send a deputy to Iron Creek, someone Pike does not know. He can watch, listen, gather evidence." Kate felt a flicker of hope. "You believe us?" "I believe that where there is smoke, there is usually fire. And I have never liked men who hide behind hired guns." Webb moved to his desk and pulled out a telegraph form. "I will also contact the territorial governor's office. Make them aware of the situation. If this escalates to murder, I want it on record that we tried to prevent it." As they prepared to leave, Webb called Kate back. "Miss Morrison, a word?" She waited while the others stepped outside. Webb studied her with those penetrating gray eyes. "Matt Bridger is a good man, one of the best I know, but he has a blind spot when it comes to protecting those he cares about. He will put himself in harm's way without hesitation." "I know," Kate said quietly. "Make sure he does not do anything foolish. Men like Pike are dangerous when cornered, and from what you have told me, he is very close to being cornered." "I will do my best, Marshal." Webb's expression softened slightly. "He is lucky to have found you. Not many women would stand and fight the way you are." "Not many women have been given the choice. Matt gave me that choice. I intend to honor it." The return journey was lighter hope riding alongside them. They stopped to water the horses at a creek halfway home, and Matt drew Kate aside while the others tended to the animals. "Thank you," he said, "for speaking up in there. Webb respects intelligence. You made our case stronger." Kate smiled. "I told you I could help." His hand came up to her face, fingers gentle against her cheek. "You have done more than help. You have given me something I thought I had lost. Hope that things can be better, that I do not have to face everything alone." She leaned into his touch, her own hand covering his. "You are not alone anymore, Matt. For as long as you want me here, I am not going anywhere." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken promises. Then Sam's voice called that they were ready, and the spell broke. But as they rode the final miles home, Kate felt the warmth of Matt's hand lingering on her skin and knew that something fundamental had shifted between them. Miles away in Iron Creek, Cornelius Pike paced his office like a caged animal. The telegram from his creditors in Cheyenne lay crumpled on his desk. They were demanding immediate payment, all of it, $10,000 he did not have and could not raise. Vic Crane sat in the corner cleaning his guns with methodical precision. Ida stood by the window, her thin face tight with anger. "Your little campaign is not working," Pike said, his voice shrill with panic. "Bridger is still operating, still defying me, and now I hear he rode to Cheyenne this morning. He is going to the marshal." "Let him go," Vic said calmly. "Without proof, Webb cannot touch you, and we have been careful to leave no proof." "We need to escalate," Ida said suddenly. Both men turned to look at her. "The problem is not Bridger. It is the woman. She has made him stronger, bolder. Before she arrived, he was alone, isolated. Now he has support. Her presence changes everything." Pike's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "Get rid of her. If she disappears, Bridger will be vulnerable again. Distracted. Weakened." Vic shook his head. "Killing a woman would bring more heat than we can handle. Webb would not ignore that." "I did not say kill her," Ida replied coldly. "Just make her leave. Frighten her badly enough that she runs back east where she belongs." Pike considered this desperation, making him receptive to ideas he would have rejected weeks ago. "Leave that to me," Ida said. "I know how to break a woman's spirit. I have been doing it for years." That Sunday, Kate attended church services for the first time since arriving in Iron Creek. She sat with Matt and the Crowleys in the Bridger family pew, acutely aware of eyes tracking her movements, whispers following in her wake. Pastor Daniel Frost was an older man with kind eyes and a voice that commanded attention without shouting. His sermon was about standing firm in the face of adversity, about the courage required to do what is right when the path is difficult. Kate wondered if he had chosen the topic specifically for her benefit. After the service, as people gathered outside in the warm sunshine, Ida Pike made her move. She stood in the center of a cluster of women, her voice pitched to Carrie. "It is a scandal, really. A mail-order bride rejected by one man taking up residence with another. Unchaperoned. Shameless." Rose Crowley stiffened beside Kate, but Kate laid a gentle hand on her arm. She had faced worse gossip in Boston. She could face this, but Ida was not finished. "And now there is violence following her wherever she goes. Cattle stolen, property destroyed. One has to wonder if she brought this trouble with her, if perhaps her past is more sordid than she admits." Several women nodded, their expressions hungry for scandal. Kate felt Matt tense beside her, felt his hand move toward her elbow as if to lead her away. But she stepped forward instead, her voice clear and steady. "Mrs. Pike, if you have accusations to make, please make them directly to me, rather than hiding behind innuendo and gossip." The crowd fell silent. Ida's face flushed, but she rallied quickly. "Very well. I find it suspicious that violence began at the Bridger Ranch only after you arrived. I find it unseemly that you live under his roof without benefit of marriage. And I find it telling that my brother, an honorable man, rejected you after correspondence. What did you hide from him in your letters, I wonder?" The word stung, but Kate kept her composure. Years of managing her father's declining social position had taught her the value of dignity under attack. "Your brother rejected me because his circumstances changed, as he himself admitted. As for living at the Bridger Ranch, I am employed as a housekeeper, a position of respect and necessity. Mrs. Crowley resides on the property as well, providing more than adequate propriety." She paused, letting her gaze move across the assembled crowd. "As for the violence, I find it interesting that Mrs. Pike seems to know so much about attacks that have only recently occurred. One might wonder how she comes by such detailed information." Ida's face went white, then red. "How dare you suggest that I suggest nothing," Kate interrupted calmly. "I merely observe that those who spread poison often have their own reasons for doing so." Pastor Frost stepped forward, his expression grave. "Enough. This is neither the time nor the place for such accusations." He turned to the congregation. "I have known Matt Bridger since he was a boy. He is a man of honor and integrity. Miss Morrison has conducted herself with nothing but grace and dignity since arriving in our community. I see no scandal here, only unkindness masquerading as concern." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Rose Crowley stepped forward and began to clap. Slowly at first then, with growing enthusiasm, one by one others joined her. Dr. Blackwood, a rancher named Sullivan and his wife, young Will Peterson. Within moments half the congregation was applauding. Ida Pike turned and fled, her face twisted with humiliation and rage. After the crowd dispersed, 10 families approached Matt and Kate. They pledged their support, their willingness to help defend the ranch, their belief in Matt's character and Kate's innocence. "We know the Pikes, Mrs.," Sullivan said firmly. "Cornelius has cheated half the town at cards. Ida is a bitter woman who spreads misery wherever she goes. You stand up to them, you have our backing." As they rode back to the ranch, Kate felt lighter than she had in weeks. The community was fractured, yes, but not broken. There were good people here, people willing to stand for what was right. That evening, as the ranch hands gathered in the main room of the bunkhouse, Kate offered to teach reading lessons to anyone interested. She expected perhaps 1 or 2 takers. Instead, 8 men showed up, their hats in their hands, their faces eager despite their embarrassment. They ranged in age from 19 to 60. Some could barely write their names. Others could read simple words but stumbled over anything more complex. Kate worked with each one patiently, her teaching instincts honed by years of helping her father with his students. The hour passed quickly, filled with small victories and gentle laughter. When Charlie Red Cloud successfully read an entire paragraph from a dime novel, the others cheered as if he had won a horse race. Matt stood in the doorway watching. Kate glanced up and caught his eye. The expression on his face made her breath catch, warmth, pride, something deeper that she was not quite ready to name. After the lesson ended, and the men filed out with promises to practice, Matt walked Kate back to the main house. The night was cool and clear, stars brilliant in the mountain sky. "You are good with them," Matt said. "Patient, kind. They respect you. They are good men. They deserve the chance to better themselves." They stopped on the porch. Matt turned to her, and in the lamplight spilling from the window, she could see the conflict in his expression. He reached out slowly, giving her time to step away. When she did not, his hand found hers, his fingers threading through hers with a tenderness that made her heart ache. "Kate," he began, his voice rough, "I need you to know something. This started as an employment arrangement, a practical solution to 2 problems, but it has become something else, something I did not expect and am not sure I deserve." "What has it become?" she asked softly. "Important. Essential." He turned her hand over and kissed her wrist gently that sent heat coursing through her. "You have become essential to me, not as a housekeeper, not even as a friend, as something more." Kate's free hand came up to his face, her fingers tracing the scar along his jaw. "You have become essential to me as well. When I came west, I thought I was looking for security, for a place to belong. I found that, but I also found something I was not looking for. Someone who makes me want to be braver than I am, someone worth fighting for." He pulled her closer, his arms encircling her waist. For a long moment they simply stood there, holding each other in the darkness, the warmth of their bodies a bulwark against the cold, and the danger pressing in from all sides. "We should go inside," Matt finally said, though he made no move to release her. "It is not safe to be exposed like this." But before they could move, the sound of hoofbeats shattered the peace. Multiple riders coming fast. Matt pushed Kate behind him, his hand going to his gun. Sam emerged from the shadows, rifle ready. 6 riders coming from the east. The riders pulled up at the edge of the yard, staying just outside the lamplight. Their faces were hidden by bandanas, their guns drawn. "Bridger," a voice called. Kate recognized it with a chill. "Vic Crane. You have until midnight tomorrow to clear out. Take your cattle and your fancy woman and leave. This is your only warning." "And if I refuse?" Matt's voice was steady, but Kate could feel the tension radiating from him. "Then we burn it all. The house, the barn, everything. And anyone who gets in the way will burn with it." One of the other riders leaned forward, starting with the woman. Pretty thing like her would be ashamed to see get hurt. The threat hung in the air like poison. Kate felt Matt's entire body go rigid with rage. "You touch her," he said, each word precise and deadly, "and I will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Vic laughed. "Big talk from a man, outnumbered and outgunned. Midnight tomorrow, Bridger. Make the smart choice." They wheeled their horses and disappeared into the darkness, leaving only dust and the echo of threats behind them. Kate found her voice. "They are not going to wait for proof or for the marshal. They are going to force this to a conclusion." "I know." Matt turned to her, his face grim in the lamplight. "Which means we need to be ready. Sam, call the men. Wake everyone. We have planning to do." Within the hour, the main room of the house was filled with ranch hands, Sam and Rose, and even young Will Peterson, all armed and grim-faced. Matt stood before them, his natural authority commanding their attention. "They have given us until tomorrow midnight. That gives us about 26 hours to prepare. We are not running. This is our land, our home, and we defend it." He outlined his plan. Reinforce the barn. Set up watch posts at all approaches. Prepare buckets of water and sand in case of fire. Ensure every weapon was loaded and ready. "They will expect us to be frightened," Matt said. "Disorganized. Instead, we will be ready, and we will have help." He looked at Sam. "Ride to the Sullivan place, to the Morrisons. To everyone who pledged support at church, tell them what is happening. Ask them to spread the word. If even half of them come, we will have the numbers to hold against Crane's men." As the room erupted in activity, Kate pulled Matt aside. "I should be the one to ride to Dr. Blackwood," she said. "He mentioned he had information about Pike's debts. If we can get word to Pike's creditors about what is happening, about how desperate he has become, they might force his hand before Crane can attack." Matt shook his head. "Too dangerous." "More dangerous than waiting here to be burned out," Kate challenged. "More dangerous than fighting armed men in the dark. Matt, this is something I can do, something only I can do. Dr. Blackwood trusts me. He will help." For a long moment Matt struggled with the decision. Finally, reluctantly, he nodded. "Rose goes with you. You take the wagon, and you carry this." He pressed a small derringer into her hand. "If anyone tries to stop you, you shoot first and ask questions later. Promise me." Kate closed her fingers around the small gun. "I promise. But Matt, I am coming back. Whatever happens, I am coming back to you." He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both promise and plea. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. "Come back safe," he whispered. "That is all I ask. Come back safe." As Kate and Rose prepared to leave, Dr. Blackwood's buggy appeared in the yard. The old doctor climbed down, his bag in hand, his expression troubled. "I came as soon as I heard about the church incident," he said. "Thought you might need a friendly face. But I see something more serious is happening." Kate quickly explained about the threat, about their plan. Blackwood listened, his expression growing darker. "I was afraid it would come to this. Pike is cornered. Men like him are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose." He reached into his coat and pulled out a telegram. "This arrived for me this afternoon, from a banker in Cheyenne. He was asking about Pike's solvency, about whether his trading post could cover his debts." "Someone already contacted them," Kate said, surprised. "The marshal, perhaps," Blackwood replied, "or someone else who knows Pike's situation. Either way, the creditors are circling. If they knew about the violence, about Pike hiring men to destroy a competitor, they would call in his loans immediately." Kate and the doctor looked at each other. The same idea bloomed in both their minds. "We need to send a telegram," Kate said. "Tonight, before Crane can attack. If we can push Pike into bankruptcy before midnight tomorrow, Crane loses his paymaster. The attack will not happen." "It is risky," Blackwood warned. "If Pike finds out, if Crane finds out, they might accelerate their plans." "It is less risky than an armed confrontation where people die," Kate countered. Matt had been listening from the doorway. Now he stepped forward. "Do it," he said. "We will prepare for the worst, but we work toward avoiding it if we can. Dr. Blackwood." "Can you send the telegram tonight, without Pike knowing?" "The telegraph office is run by a young man named Peters. He owes me a favor. His wife had a difficult birth last year. I saved both her and the baby. He will keep it quiet." As Blackwood prepared to leave, Kate stopped him. "Tell them everything. Tell them Pike is bankrupt. Tell them he hired men to destroy a competitor through violence and arson. Tell them if they do not act immediately, there will be blood on their hands as well as his." The doctor nodded gravely. "I will make sure they understand the stakes." After he left, the household settled into tense preparation. Kate helped Rose prepare bandages and medical supplies, hoping they would not be needed, but knowing they probably would be. The men worked through the night, reinforcing positions, checking weapons, making ready for whatever dawn might bring. In the hours before sunrise, Kate stood on the porch watching Matt make his rounds. He moved with quiet confidence, checking each position, encouraging each man, ensuring everyone knew their role. This was who he truly was, she realized. Not just a rancher or a cowboy, but a leader. Someone people trusted to make hard decisions and stand by them. Someone worth following into danger. And someone she admitted to herself as the first light touched the eastern sky, worth loving with everything she had. The sun rose on a ranch prepared for war, but hoping for peace. The men stood ready at their posts. The women had supplies organized for whatever came, and somewhere in Cheyenne, a telegram was making its way to men who held Cornelius Pike's future in their hands. Kate stood beside Matt on the porch, watching the road, waiting for either salvation or catastrophe to appear over the horizon. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "we face it together, Matt's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "Together," he agreed. And in that moment, despite the danger pressing close, despite the uncertainty of what the next hours would bring, Kate felt something she had not felt since her father died. She felt like she was home. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Every hour that brought them closer to midnight felt like a tightening noose. Kate busied herself with practical tasks, checking supplies, organizing the medical station she had set up in the parlor, trying not to think about what the night might bring. By mid-afternoon, riders began arriving. First came the Sullivans' husband and wife, both armed, their 2 grown sons carrying rifles. Then the Morrison family, no relation to Kate, but equally determined to stand against injustice. The Hendersons, the Rileys, the Caldwells. One by one, families who had pledged their support at church made good on their promises. By 4 o'clock, 23 additional people stood in the yard of Bridger Ranch, and more were coming. Pastor Frost arrived just before sunset, his buggy loaded not with weapons but with food his parishioners had sent. The old minister climbed down stiffly, his eyes taking in the armed men and fortified positions with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "I had hoped it would not come to this," he said to Matt. "But I am not surprised. Evil men rarely surrender their plans peacefully." He gathered everyone in front of the main house, his white hair glowing in the fading light. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of conviction earned through decades of service. "My friends, we stand here tonight not because we seek violence, but because we refuse to allow violence to triumph unopposed. There is an old saying that evil prevails when good people remain silent. Tonight we will not be silent. Tonight we stand together for what is right, for what is just, and for the protection of those who cannot protect themselves alone." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Kate felt tears prick her eyes at the simple courage of these people who owed Matt nothing but came anyway. "We will defend this land," Pastor Frost continued. "We will defend this family, and we will do so knowing that righteousness is on our side, even if the night ahead is dark and dangerous." He bowed his head. "Let us pray for wisdom, for courage, and for the safety of all who stand here tonight." The prayer was simple and heartfelt. When it ended, Kate felt a quiet strength settle over the assembled group. They were no longer individuals scattered across the territory. They were a community united by common purpose. Sam organized them with military precision. Guard posts were assigned, relief rotations established. Dr. Blackwood set up a second medical station in the barn. Women who were not comfortable with weapons took charge of water buckets and fire watch. Even the children had jobs acting as runners between positions. Kate worked alongside Rose preparing food for the defenders. As she cut bread and sliced cold meat, Mrs. Sullivan joined her. "My husband lost half his herd to rustlers 2 years ago," the older woman said quietly. "Pike bought the cattle cheap from the thieves, then resold them for profit. We could never prove it, but we knew. Tonight is not just about defending Matt's ranch. It is about standing against a man who has hurt too many people for too long." As darkness fell, Matt found Kate in the kitchen. She was washing dishes, her hands moving automatically while her mind raced with worry. "Come with me," he said softly. "There is something I want to show you." She dried her hands and followed him outside. They slipped away from the bustle of preparation, walking up the hill behind the house. From the crest, they could see the entire ranch spread below them. Lamplight flickered from guard posts. Figures moved with purpose in the gathering darkness. It looked like a small fortress preparing for siege. "There," Matt said, pointing to a gentle slope in the valley beyond. "That is where I want to build our house." Kate turned to him in surprise. "Our house?" He faced her, fully taking both her hands in his. "Kate Morrison, I brought you here as an employee, someone to keep my house in exchange for wages and safety. But that is not what you have become to me." His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands, his touch gentle despite the calluses. "You have become the reason I check to make sure the house is warm enough at night. The reason I find myself listening for your voice even when I am out on the range. The reason I want to build something that lasts, something beautiful, something worth protecting." Kate's heart hammered in her chest. "Matt, I know the timing is terrible," he continued, a rueful smile touching his lips. "Standing on a hill while armed men wait below to attack. But if tonight has taught me anything, it is that we are not promised tomorrow, and I refuse to let another day pass without telling you the truth." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket. When he opened his palm, a ring glinted in the starlight. A simple gold band set with a deep blue sapphire. "This was my mother's. My father gave it to her when he asked her to come west with him from Philadelphia. She always said the sapphire reminded her of the Wyoming sky on a clear day." He looked into Kate's eyes, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she had never seen. "I am asking you to marry me, not because you need protection or security, not because it is practical or convenient, but because I love you, because you have brought light back into a life I thought would always be shadowed, because I cannot imagine a future without you in it." Kate felt tears spill down her cheeks. "The timing is terrible," she agreed, her voice shaking with emotion. "But the question is perfect." She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the rough stubble of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "Ask me again when this is over, when we have won, when we can stand here without fear and look toward that valley and actually believe we will build a house there together. Ask me then, and I will give you my answer." Understanding dawned in his eyes. She was not refusing. She was asking for the chance to say yes in a moment untainted by violence and fear. "When we have won," he repeated softly, "I will hold you to that." He kissed her, then his lips tender against hers, the ring pressed between their joined hands. For a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. No danger, no fear, just the promise of a future they would fight to claim. A rifle shot cracked through the night, shattering the moment. They broke apart and ran back down the hill toward the ranch. Sam met them halfway, his face grim in the lamplight. "Message came while you were gone, nailed to the barn door." He handed Matt a piece of paper. Matt read it aloud by lamplight. "Midnight at the old Hadley sawmill. Bring the woman. Come alone or she dies anyway. You have 1 hour." Kate felt ice flood her veins. "It is a trap." "Obviously," Sam said. "Question is, do we spring it?" Matt crumpled the paper in his fist fury and fear warring in his expression. "They want me separated from our defenses, want me vulnerable and alone. Then we do not give them what they want," Kate said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "We give them something else entirely." She looked between Matt and Sam. "We use their trap against them. I go to the sawmill, but I am not alone. I am bait to draw them in while you surround them." "Absolutely not," Matt said immediately. "I will not put you in that kind of danger." "It is already dangerous," Kate countered. "If we wait here, they will attack the ranch. People will die. Children are here, Matt. Families. But if we can end this tonight, if we can catch Crane and his men in the act, we can finish it." Sam spoke up reluctantly. "She has a point, boss, and we would have the element of surprise. They think we will refuse or that you will come alone." "What about the marshal?" Matt demanded. "We wait for him to arrive with deputies." "His telegram said he would be here by morning," Sam replied. "This message gives us 1 hour. We do not have time to wait." Matt looked at Kate, anguish clear in his eyes. "I cannot ask you to do this." "You are not asking. I am offering." She stepped close to him, her hand on his chest. "I am not the helpless woman who arrived on that train platform. You have helped me become someone stronger, someone brave enough to fight for what matters. Trust me to do this. Trust me to be your partner, not just someone you protect." For a long moment, Matt struggled with the decision. Finally, he nodded. "We do this right, full precautions. You wear a vest under your coat. You carry the Derringer, and you do exactly what we plan, no improvisation." Kate nodded. "Agreed." They had 45 minutes to prepare. Sam gathered the most experienced shooters, 8 men who could move quietly and shoot straight. Marshal Webb's deputy, who had arrived that afternoon, insisted on joining them. "If we catch them in the act," he said, "I can arrest them on federal charges, kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy. Pike will go down with them." The plan was simple but dangerous. Kate would arrive at the sawmill on horseback, appearing to be alone. Matt and the others would already be in position, hidden in the abandoned buildings and forest surrounding the clearing. When Crane revealed himself and made his demands, they would have him surrounded. Kate changed into dark clothing, the heavy vest uncomfortable but reassuring beneath her coat. She checked the Derringer, making sure it was loaded, then slipped it into her pocket. Rose helped her pin up her hair. "You are either the bravest woman I have ever met or the most foolish." "Perhaps both," Kate admitted. "But I cannot let Matt face this alone, and I cannot let innocent people die defending me when there is another way." As they prepared to leave, Pastor Frost approached Kate. He placed his weathered hands on her shoulders, his eyes kind. "My child, I do not know if what you are doing is wise, but I know it is done from love, and that counts for much. May God watch over you tonight." The ride to the Hadley sawmill took 20 minutes. The others had left earlier, moving into position under cover of darkness. Kate rode alone, her heart pounding with each step her horse took. The sawmill loomed against the starlit sky, its broken machinery like the bones of some prehistoric creature. The main building was partially collapsed, but the clearing around it was open, offering no cover for an ambush. Unless that ambush came from inside the buildings themselves. Kate dismounted and tied her horse to a post, her hands shaking slightly. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to calm her racing pulse. Somewhere in the darkness, Matt was watching. She was not alone. "Well, well," a voice drawled from the shadows. "The little mail-order bride actually came." Vic Crane stepped into the clearing, a rifle cradled in his arms. Behind him, 7 more men emerged from the darkness, all armed, all wearing expressions that made Kate's skin crawl. "Where is Bridger?" Vic demanded. "I came alone," Kate said, proud that her voice did not shake. "You said to bring me. Here I am. Let this end, without more violence." Vic laughed harsh and ugly. "Oh, it will end. But not the way you hope." He moved closer, circling her like a predator. "You cost me a lot of money, sweetheart. Pike was willing to pay good money to make Bridger suffer. Then you showed up and complicated everything." "Pike's money is worthless," Kate said. "His creditors are calling in his debts as we speak. He has nothing left to pay you with." Vic's expression darkened. "That's so. Then I guess I will have to settle for the satisfaction of watching Bridger lose everything he cares about." He raised his rifle, pointing it directly at Kate's chest. "Starting with you." The clearing exploded into chaos. "Federal Marshal, drop your weapons." As the gunfight erupted, a figure emerged from the shadowed sawmill. Ida Pike, her face twisted with rage, raised a rifle toward Matt's back. "This is for my brother," she screamed. Kate saw her first. Without thinking, she raised her derringer and fired. The shot went wide, but close enough to make Ida flinch. Her rifle discharged the bullet, grazing Matt's shoulder instead of hitting center mass. Matt spun, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Sam tackled Ida before she could fire again, wresting the rifle from her hands. "You destroyed everything!" Ida shrieked as Sam bound her wrists. "Cornelius is ruined because of you, because of her." Marshal Webb's deputy stepped forward. "Ida Pike, you are under arrest for attempted murder." Shots rang out from every direction. Vic's men scattered, returning fire blindly into the darkness. Kate threw herself to the ground, rolling behind an old wagon wheel as bullets tore through the air above her. Matt burst from the sawmill, his rifle firing with deadly accuracy. One of Vic's men went down clutching his shoulder. Another threw down his gun and raised his hands in surrender. Vic himself was running, abandoning his men, heading for the tree line. Matt went after him, and Kate saw him disappear into the darkness in pursuit. She could not let him face Vic alone. Not when Vic had already demonstrated he had no honor, no conscience. Kate pulled the derringer from her pocket and ran after them. She found them in a small clearing 50 yards into the trees. They had abandoned their rifles and were fighting hand to hand, 2 men locked in brutal combat fueled by years of hatred and pain. Vic was faster, his movements fluid with practiced violence. But Matt was stronger, powered by righteous fury and the need to protect what he loved. They grappled, trading blows that echoed in the night air. Vic pulled a knife, slashing at Matt's face. Matt dodged the blade, missing by inches, then drove his fist into Vic's solar plexus with crushing force. Vic staggered back, wheezing. His eyes found Kate standing at the edge of the clearing, her derringer pointed shakily in his direction. "You killed my brother," Vic gasped at Matt. "Shot him in the back like a coward." "I shot him in battle," Matt replied, his voice hard. "During a war neither of us wanted to fight. He was a soldier, so was I. It was not murder. It was survival." "He was 18 years old." Vic's voice broke with old grief. "And I was 19, Matt said more quietly. "You think I do not carry every man I killed?" "You think I sleep well at night. War makes monsters of us all, Vic. But what you are doing now, that is a choice. You are choosing to hurt innocent people for money and revenge. That is not war. That is just evil." For a moment something flickered in Vic's eyes. Doubt? Regret? The recognition of a truth he had spent years denying. Then it hardened into resolve. Too late for redemption now. He lunged forward, knife raised. Matt sidestepped and brought his elbow down hard on Vic's wrist. The knife flew free. Matt followed with a devastating uppercut that sent Vic sprawling. Before Vic could rise, Matt had him pinned, one knee on his back, twisting his arms behind him. "It is over," Matt said. "You are done." Sam and the deputy arrived with rope. They bound Vic securely while reading him his charges. Kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy. Each charge carried years in territorial prison. Back in the clearing, 5 of Vic's men were in custody. 2 had fled into the night. 1 was dead from a rifle shot to the chest. The deputy assured them that wanted posters would be issued for those who escaped. As they prepared to transport the prisoners back to town, Kate found herself shaking uncontrollably, the adrenaline draining from her system and leaving her weak. Matt pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering, feel the tremors running through his own body. "You were magnificent," he whispered into her hair. "Terrifying and magnificent." "I was terrified," she admitted. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite fear. And you, Kate Morrison, are the bravest person I know. They rode back to the ranch in a convoy, prisoners secured, wounded tended, victory achieved, but at a cost Kate was only beginning to understand. The cost of standing for what was right in a world that often rewarded the wicked. The cost of loving someone enough to risk everything. The cost of becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone worthy of the life she was building. As the ranch came into view, lamplight blazing from every window, Kate saw the assembled families waiting anxiously for news. When they spotted the returning riders, a cheer went up. They had won. Not just a battle, but something more important. They had proven that a community standing together could overcome evil, that ordinary people refusing to be silent could change the course of events, that love and courage and simple human decency still mattered in this hard land. Matt helped Kate down from her horse. She stumbled slightly, exhausted beyond words. He caught her, steadying her, his hands gentle despite their strength. "One more thing left to do," he said softly. He led her back up the hill where they had stood earlier. The valley stretched before them, peaceful now, the threat past. Matt took her hands in his. "We won," he said quietly. "And when the dust settles, when this is truly over, I will ask you properly, with the community as witness, the way you deserve." Kate smiled through her tears. "I will be waiting for that question." He pulled her close, and they stood together under the stars, knowing that the proposal would come soon, in the right moment, in the right way. And as he kissed her beneath the Wyoming stars, Kate knew that she had finally found what she had been searching for all along, not just a home, not just security, but a place where she belonged, a purpose worth fighting for, and a love worth every risk she had taken to claim it. Dawn broke over Iron Creek in shades of gold and amber, painting the mountains with light that seemed almost sacred after the darkness of the night before. Kate stood on the porch of the ranch house, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the sun climb above the eastern peaks. Behind her, the house was filled with people. Families who had stood watch through the night now gathered around the kitchen table, sharing coffee and the simple relief of having survived. Children who had been kept safe in the cellar during the confrontation now ran laughing through the yard, their joy a balm against the violence that had threatened them all. Marshal Webb had arrived an hour before dawn, his face grim when he saw the prisoners secured in the barn. Now he sat across from Vic Crane in Matt's study, the door closed, conducting an interrogation that would determine the fate of everyone involved. Kate heard raised voices, the scrape of a chair, then silence. After 20 minutes, the door opened, and Webb emerged holding a sheaf of papers covered in handwriting. "Miss Morrison, Mr. Bridger, you should hear this," the marshal said. They gathered in the study. Vic Crane sat slumped in his chair, his face bruised from the fight, his eyes hollow with defeat. Whatever fire had burned in him for revenge had guttered out, leaving only ash and regret. Webb held up the papers. "Crane has given a full confession. Names, dates, amounts paid. Pike hired him 6 weeks ago for $500, with another $500 promised once Bridger was driven off his land or killed." He flipped through the pages. Telegraph records. Marked bills that Pike gave him as down payment. Testimony about 3 separate attacks on this ranch, including tonight's attempted kidnapping. Matt's jaw tightened. Is it enough to arrest Pike? More than enough. Conspiracy to commit murder, arson, theft. These are federal crimes. Pike will spend the rest of his life in territorial prison if convicted. And with this evidence, conviction is certain. Vic spoke for the first time, his voice rough. "For what it is worth, Bridger, I know it does not change anything. But my brother's death was not your fault. I have known that for years. I just could not let go of the anger. Pike gave me an excuse to use it, and I took it." Matt looked at the broken man before him. "War destroys more than just those who die in it. It destroys those who survive too, if we let it." "I let it," Vic said simply. "That is on me, not on you." Webb stood. "I need to form a posse. Pike will run if he has not already. We need to move fast." Within 30 minutes, a group had assembled. Matt, Sam, Dr. Blackwood, Pastor Frost, and 8 men from the community. They were armed but somber, understanding that they rode not for vengeance, but for justice. As they prepared to leave, Ida Pike was brought from the barn where she had been held overnight. Her expensive dress was rumpled, her hair disheveled, her face a mask of fury and fear. "This is outrageous," she hissed at Webb. "You cannot hold me. I have done nothing wrong." "You were part of a conspiracy to commit murder," Webb replied calmly. "That makes you an accessory, unless you cooperate." Ida's eyes darted between the assembled men, calculating her options and finding none that led to freedom. "What do you want to know? Where is your brother?" She hesitated, loyalty warring with self-preservation. Self-preservation won. "There is an abandoned mining camp 15 miles north, Silver Creek Canyon. He mentioned it once as a place to hide if things went wrong. He may have gone there. Webb nodded to his deputy. Put her in a wagon. She comes with us. If she is lying, she faces the same charges as her brother. Kate stepped forward. I am coming too. Matt turned to her, concern immediate in his eyes. Kate, you have been through enough. Stay here. Rest. I need to see this through to the end, she said firmly. I need to know that Pike faces justice for what he tried to do, not just to us, but to all the people he has cheated and hurt over the years. Matt understood. He helped her onto her horse, his hand lingering on hers for a moment. Stay close to me, he said quietly. No more heroics today. The ride to Silver Creek Canyon took 3 hours. They traveled in tense silence, each person lost in their own thoughts about what they might find at journey's end. The mining camp appeared as they crested a ridge. A collection of ramshackle buildings clustered around the mouth of a played-out silver mine. Abandoned equipment rusted in the mountain air. The whole place had the melancholy feel of dreams gone sour. Webb sent men around to cover all approaches. Then he met Sam and Doctor. Blackwood approached the largest building, weapons drawn. Pike, Webb called. This is U.S. Marshal Webb. Come out with your hands visible. You are under arrest. Silence answered them. A raven called from a dead tree. Wind whistled through broken windows. They entered cautiously, moving through rooms filled with debris and decay. In the back room they found him. Cornelius Pike sat in a chair, his head tilted back, at an unnatural angle, a revolver on the floor beside him. A single bullet hole marked his right temple. Blood had long since dried on his collar. On the table before him lay a letter, the ink still fresh enough to read. Dr. Blackwood checked for a pulse, then shook his head. He has been dead several hours, sometime before midnight, I would estimate. Webb picked up the letter, his expression grave as he read. When he finished, he looked at Matt and Kate. He confesses to everything, the gambling debts, hiring Crane, the attacks on your ranch. He also lists everyone he cheated over the past 10 years, along with the amounts he stole or owed them. Webb's voice was heavy. There are 37 names on this list. Kate moved closer to read over his shoulder. The letter was rambling in places, coherent in others. Pike had written it in a state of desperate clarity, knowing his world was collapsing and choosing this final escape rather than facing the consequences of his actions. I thought I could win it all back, the letter read. Just one more good hand, one more deal, but the debts kept growing. And when Bridger took the woman who should have solved my problems, I saw red. Crane offered a solution. I took it. God forgive me, I took it. The letter ended with a plea for mercy for his sister and a bitter acknowledgement that he had destroyed himself through his own greed and pride. Pastor Frost, who had entered behind them, removed his hat and bowed his head. May God have mercy on his soul. He was a wicked man, but he was still a man, still one of God's children who lost his way. They buried Cornelius Pike in the cemetery behind the Iron Creek Church 3 days later. Attendance was sparse. Ida stood alone beside the grave, her face a mask of stone. A few townspeople came out of morbid curiosity rather than respect. Kate attended because she needed to see this chapter closed. Matt stood beside her, his hand in hers, solid and reassuring. As Pastor Frost spoke words of committal over the plain pine coffin, Kate reflected on the strange path that had brought her to this moment. 6 weeks ago, she had expected to marry this man, to share his life and his home. The thought now seemed absurd, a narrow escape from a future that would have slowly poisoned her soul. After the service, Marshal Webb gathered the community at the church. The letter Pike had left became the basis for restitution. His trading post and all its inventory would be sold. The proceeds would be distributed among his victims according to the amounts he had listed. Dr. Blackwood would receive $300, Widow Hayes $200, the Sullivan family $400. Down the list, it went 37 people who would finally receive justice even if they could never fully recover what had been stolen. The law is not just about punishment, Webb said to the assembled crowd. It is also about making things right when we can. Pike's victims will not get everything back, but they will get something. That matters. In the week that followed, Iron Creek began to heal. The Citizens Alliance, formed in crisis, decided to continue as a permanent organization. They established a town council with elected representatives. They voted to use part of the Pike settlement money to build a proper schoolhouse. And they voted unanimously to ask Kate Morrison to be the teacher. She stood before them in the church, overwhelmed by their trust, their belief in her abilities. I am honored, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Teaching has always been my passion. To do it here in this community that has given me so much would be a privilege. Mrs. Sullivan stood, her weathered face kind. You stood with us when you did not have to. You risked your life to help bring down a man who had hurt many of us. This is not charity, Miss Morrison. This is gratitude. Doctor. Blackwood rose as well. I have been practicing medicine in this territory for 30 years. I have seen courage take many forms, but the courage to stand for what is right, when you are afraid, when you have everything to lose, that is the rarest kind. You showed us that courage, Miss Morrison, and in doing so, you showed us what we could become if we stood together. His words echoed in the simple church, profound in their simplicity. Kate felt tears slip down her cheeks, tears of gratitude and belonging, and the profound relief of finally being seen, truly seen, for who she was. That evening, Matt asked her to take a walk with him. They strolled through town as the sun set, painting the buildings in shades of gold. People called out greetings, children waved. Kate felt the warmth of acceptance of a community wrapping around her like a blanket. They ended up at the church, standing in front of the small cemetery where Pike was buried alongside other residents of Iron Creek. Matt stopped at a different grave, one marked with a simple stone that read, Elizabeth Bridger, beloved wife and mother. I come here sometimes to talk to her, Matt said quietly, to tell her about the ranch, about my decisions, about my life. He glanced at Kate. I told her about you yesterday, about everything that has happened, about how you changed everything. Kate waited, knowing he needed to speak this in his own time. My mother was a woman of great faith. She believed things happened for a reason even when we could not see the reason at the time. His hand found Kate's. She would have liked you, would have loved how you stood up to Pike, how you fought for what was right, how you chose to stay and build something rather than run when things got hard. I wish I could have met her, Kate said softly. In a way you have. Every book in the house was hers. Every value I try to live by came from her. When you teach those children in the new school, you will be continuing her work. She would have been proud of that. They stood in comfortable silence as darkness gathered. Then Matt turned to face her fully, and Kate saw a nervousness in his expression that she had never seen before. Kate, when I asked you to marry me on that hill during the battle, you said yes. But that was in the heat of the moment, with danger all around us. I want to ask you again properly, with the community as witness. Before she could respond, she realized they were not alone. People had gathered quietly around the edges of the cemetery. Sam and Rose, Dr. Blackwood, Pastor Frost, the Sullivans, the families who had stood with them, even some who had been uncertain before but had seen the truth revealed and changed their minds. Matt dropped to one knee in front of her, the sapphire ring once again in his hand. Catherine Morrison, he said, his voice clear and strong enough for everyone to hear. You came to this territory expecting one life and found a different one. You faced rejection with dignity. You faced danger with courage. You faced injustice with wisdom and strength. You took a place that did not want you and made it better by being here. He paused, emotion roughening his voice. I am asking you to stay, not as my housekeeper, not as my employee, but as my wife, my partner, my equal in all things, to build a life with me in this hard, beautiful land, to raise children and cattle and dreams together, to face whatever comes with the same courage you have already shown. Kate looked around at the assembled faces, these people who had become her community, her family. Then she looked back at Matt, kneeling before her with his heart in his eyes. Matthew Bridger, she said loud enough for all to hear, 6 weeks ago I was a desperate woman with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. You gave me shelter when I had none, respect when I had lost it, the chance to prove myself when the world said I was worthless merchandise to be returned. She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the familiar roughness of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. But more than that, you showed me what it means to love someone not for what they can give you, but for who they are. You taught me that strength is not about never being afraid, but about acting despite fear. You gave me a home not by offering me a house, but by seeing me, truly seeing me, and choosing me anyway. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice never wavered. So yes, yes, I will marry you. Yes, I will build a life with you. Yes, I will stand beside you through whatever this territory throws at us, because you are the man I choose, the life I choose, the future I choose. Matt slipped the ring onto her finger for the second time, and this time it felt like a covenant sealed not just between two people, but witnessed by an entire community. He stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as the assembled crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Pastor Frost's voice rose above the celebration. Then, by the authority vested in me by the territory of Wyoming and the grace of God, I will be honored to marry you both. Shall we say 2 weeks from today? That should give the ladies time to prepare a proper celebration. 2 weeks. Kate's heart soared with joy and anticipation. 2 weeks until she would stand in the church she had come to love, in the community that had embraced her, and pledge her life to the man who had saved her in more ways than he would ever know. As the crowd dispersed, offering congratulations and already making plans for the wedding, Matt held Kate close. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "It is not too late to change your mind. Ranch life is hard. Winters are brutal. You would be giving up the possibility of returning to civilization." Kate laughed, the sound bright with happiness. "Matt, I have been thinking about this for weeks. I am more sure of this than I have been of anything in my life. This is not settling. This is choosing. And I choose you. I choose this land. I choose this life." She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars that had watched over her journey west, her rejection, her redemption. "I was never meant to be Cornelius Pike's mail-order bride. I was meant to find my way to you. Everything that happened, every hardship and every triumph brought me here, to this moment, to this choice, and I would not change a single step of the journey." Matt rested his forehead against hers, his arms strong and sure around her. "Neither would I," he whispered. "Neither would I." The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a whirlwind of activity that transformed Iron Creek from a collection of individuals into something greater, a true community united by shared purpose and joy. The day after Matt's proposal, Sam Crowley rode out to the valley site Matt had shown Kate. He returned with measurements and sketches, his lined face creased with satisfaction. "Good land," he reported. "Level foundation, creek nearby for water, stand of timber on the north side for windbreak. We can start breaking ground tomorrow if the weather holds." "We?" Matt asked. Sam grinned. "You think we would let you build alone? Every man who stood with us that night wants to help. Call it a wedding gift." And so it began. What started as Matt's dream became the community's project. Men arrived each morning with tools and timber. Some brought wagons loaded with cut stone from their own quarries. Others contributed window glass, saved from abandoned homesteads, precious and carefully preserved. Kate watched in wonder as the house took shape. Not the grand mansion of her Boston childhood, but something better. Something built with the hands of friends, every nail driven with care, every board measured with precision. The women gathered at the ranch house, transforming it from bachelor quarters into a proper home, while the new house rose in the valley. Rose led the effort with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. Curtains were sewn. Quilts were pieced together from scraps contributed by a dozen families. A wedding dress emerged from careful hands and precious fabric, simple but beautiful in its craftsmanship. Kate stood for her final fitting, turning slowly as Mrs. Sullivan pinned the hem. The dress was cream-colored silk, the bodice fitted the sleeves modest. Lace from Rose's own wedding dress adorned the collar. Pearl buttons, a gift from Dr. Blackwood's late wife's collection, ran down the back. "You look like an angel," Rose said softly, tears in her eyes. "Matt will not be able to breathe when he sees you." In the evenings, Kate worked with Pastor Frost to prepare for her role as teacher. He brought books from his personal library, primers, and readers he had used when Iron Creek first established its small school years ago. "The children here need more than just reading and arithmetic," he said. "They need to understand the wider world, to know that this territory, as beautiful as it is part of something larger. You can give them that, Kate. You have lived in both worlds." On the Wednesday before the wedding, Kate rode into town for supplies and found Dr. Blackwood waiting outside his office. "Miss Morrison, might I have a word?" They sat in his parlor, and he poured them both tea with the careful ceremony of a man who valued civilization's small rituals even on the frontier. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for what you did. Not just exposing Pike, but for showing this community what courage looks like. We had grown complacent, I think, willing to tolerate injustice because confronting it seemed too difficult." He set down his cup, his steady hands showing no tremor of age. "You reminded us that silence in the face of evil is itself a form of evil, that good people have an obligation to stand up, to speak out, to act. That is a lesson this town needed, and one I hope we never forget." Kate felt humility wash over her. "I only did what needed doing." "Precisely. And that is the definition of heroism, my dear. Not grand gestures, but ordinary people doing what needs doing, despite the cost." He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small leather journal. "This belonged to my daughter. She died of scarlet fever when she was 12. She loved to write to record her observations of the world. I thought perhaps you might use it to record your own observations. A teacher should document what she learns as well as what she teaches." Kate accepted the gift with trembling hands, understanding the profound trust it represented. "I will treasure it and honor her memory by filling it with hope and wisdom." The day before the wedding, the new house was finished. Matt walked Kate through it as the sun set, showing her every detail with the pride of a craftsman and the tenderness of a man in love. The main room was spacious, with a stone fireplace large enough to heat the entire space. Windows faced east to catch the morning light. The kitchen was twice the size of the one at the ranch house, with a modern stove contributed by 3 families pooling their resources. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms waited. The larger for Matt and Kate, with windows overlooking the valley. The smaller already prepared as a nursery hope and expectation built into its very walls. But it was the corner of the main room that made Kate's breath catch. Built-in bookshelves lined one wall, sturdy and beautiful, crafted by Sam's own hands. Already Matt's mother's books filled the lower shelves with room for hundreds more above. "Your library?" Matt said quietly. "Every teacher needs one, and every home should have a place for wisdom to grow." Kate turned into his arms, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, the love built into every corner of this house. "It is perfect. Everything about it is perfect." "Not perfect," Matt corrected gently, "but ours. Built with our own hands and the hands of people who care about us. That makes it better than perfect." The wedding day dawned clear and cool, the September air crisp with the promise of autumn. Kate woke in the ranch house for the last time, surrounded by Rose and Mrs. Sullivan and half a dozen other women who had insisted on helping her prepare. They dressed her with care, each woman contributing a small tradition. Rose pinned wildflowers in her hair. Mrs. Sullivan fastened the pearl buttons. Widow Hayes, who had lost her own husband 5 years before, placed a lace handkerchief in Kate's hand. "Something borrowed," she said, "for luck and love." The procession to the new house was half the town. Wagons and horses and people on foot, all dressed in their Sunday best, all eager to witness the union of 2 people who had come to represent hope and courage to the entire community. The house stood ready, its porch decorated with late summer flowers and ribbon. Chairs had been arranged in neat rows facing the steps. Pastor Frost waited there in his black coat, his Bible in hand, his face serene with the joy of his calling. Matt stood beside him, and Kate's heart stuttered at the sight of him. He wore a new suit, black wool that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. His dark hair was neatly combed. His face was clean-shaven, but it was his eyes that held her blue and intense and filled with a love so profound it took her breath away. Sam walked Kate down the makeshift aisle, standing in it for the father she had lost. When they reached the porch, he placed her hand in Matt's with a gruff tenderness that brought tears to Kate's eyes. "Take care of her, boss," he said quietly. "She is precious cargo." "I know," Matt replied. "I will spend my life being worthy of her." Pastor Frost's voice rang out clear in the mountain air. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God and this community to witness the joining of Matthew Bridger and Catherine Morrison in holy matrimony." The familiar words washed over them, sacred and binding. But it was the personal vows that mattered most. Matt spoke first, his voice steady, despite the emotion Kate could see in his eyes. "Kate, when you stepped off that train, you were looking for security and a place to belong. I offered you employment, shelter, safety. But what you gave me was so much more. You gave me hope when I had forgotten what it felt like. You gave me courage to stand for what is right, even when the cost was high. You gave me a future worth building." He brought her hands to his chest, pressing them against his heart. "I promise to honor you not as property, but as partner. To value your wisdom and your strength. To build our life together, not with you following behind, but walking beside me. To love you in prosperity and in hardship, in joy and in sorrow for all the days of my life." Kate's turn. She had rehearsed these words 100 times, but now looking into his eyes, they came from her heart without effort. "Matt, you saved my life that day in Pike's store, but more than that, you gave me the chance to save myself. You saw worth in me when I had forgotten my own value. You treated me with respect when the world said I deserved none. You showed me that real strength is not in dominance, but in gentleness, not in control, but in trust." Her voice strengthened, carrying to the assembled crowd. "I promise to stand with you in building this life we have chosen. To bring wisdom when I have it, and humility when I do not. To raise our children with love and teach them the values you have shown me. To face this hard, beautiful land with courage and grace. To love you not because I must, but because I choose to every single day." Pastor Frost smiled. "Matthew Bridger, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Catherine Morrison, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do." "Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, and by God's grace, I pronounce you husband and wife. Matthew, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was tender and full of promise witnessed by 70 people who erupted in cheers and applause. When they parted, Kate looked out at the assembled faces and saw not strangers but family. A community that had embraced her, fought for her, and now celebrated with her. The celebration lasted until the stars came out. There was food contributed by every family, music from fiddles and guitars, dancing on the porch and in the yard. Children ran wild with joy, while their parents relaxed into the simple pleasure of peace after conflict. As the evening drew to a close and guests began departing with final congratulations, Matt and Kate stood at the door of their new home, thanking each person who had helped make this day possible. When the last wagon rolled away, they were finally alone. Matt closed the door and turned to his wife, his expression a mixture of wonder and contentment. "We did it," he said simply. Kate laughed. "We did, though I think the community did most of the work. That is what community means, carrying each other's burdens, celebrating each other's joys." He pulled her close. "And now we begin the rest of our lives." They sat together by the fire, not speaking much, simply being. The house settled around them with small creaks and ties, as if it too was content. Outside, the wind whispered through the valley that would be their home for all the years to come. "Any regrets?" Matt asked, echoing the question he had asked before. Kate looked around at the house they had built, the life they had claimed, the future stretching before them like an unwritten book. "Not a single one. If Cornelius Pike had not rejected me, I would never have found you. I would never have discovered who I could become. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best destinations." Matt kissed the top of her head. "Then I am grateful to Pike, strange as that sounds. His cruelty became our blessing." 7 years passed like water flowing over stone each day, shaping and smoothing the life Matt and Kate built together. In the spring of 1879, Kate opened the Iron Creek School with 12 students ranging in age from 6 to 16. By the end of that first year, enrollment had grown to 25. Children came from homesteads and ranches miles away, boarding with families in town during the week so they could receive an education. Kate taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. But more than that, she taught hope. She showed ranch children that the world was larger than their valley, that knowledge was a door to possibilities they had never imagined. In 1881, Samuel Matthew Bridger was born on a cold February morning. Rose Crowley served as midwife, her experienced hands guiding Kate through the difficult hours of labor. When Matt first held his son, Kate saw tears stream down her husband's wind-carved face. "He looks like my mother," Matt whispered. Same eyes, same determined expression. They named him for Sam Crowley, the man who had been father figure, friend, and faithful foreman. Sam himself wept openly when told his gruff exterior no match for the honor. 2 years later, Rose Catherine Bridger arrived smaller than her brother, but with a voice that announced she would not be ignored. This time the birth was easier, and Kate recovered quickly, eager to return to her students and her life. The Bridger Ranch prospered. Matt expanded the operation to 12,000 acres, his cattle earning premium prices for their quality. He hired additional hands, including young Will Peterson as assistant foreman, grooming him to eventually take over from the aging Sam. But it was the community that grew most dramatically. Iron Creek transformed from a rough frontier town into a proper settlement. A new church was built larger and more elegant than the old one. A bank opened, bringing financial stability. The school Kate had started became a 2-room structure, requiring a second teacher to handle the growing enrollment. The Citizens Alliance became the town council, establishing laws and order without losing the frontier spirit of independence and mutual support. They built a library using books donated from across the territory, naming it the Elizabeth Bridger Memorial Library in honor of Matt's mother. Through it all, Matt and Kate remained the heart of the community. Their home became a gathering place for town meetings, for celebrations, for quiet conversations over coffee when neighbors needed counsel or support. On a crisp October morning in 1885, Kate stood on the platform of Iron Creek Station, watching the train pull in with its cargo of hope and desperation. She was 33 now, her face showing the character lines earned through 7 years of Wyoming sun and wind. Her hands, once soft from Boston parlors, were now capable and strong from ranch work and teaching. The passengers disembarked, cowboys heading to ranches, merchants with goods to sell, families seeking new starts, and one young woman standing alone, clutching a worn carpet bag, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Kate recognized the expression. She had worn it herself 7 years ago. The woman was Chinese, perhaps 25, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her dress, though travel-worn, was clean and carefully mended. She scanned the platform, clearly looking for someone who was not there. Kate approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hello? Are you waiting for someone?" The woman's English was accented but clear. "I am Lucy Chen. I came from San Francisco to marry Mr. Robert Whitmore. He sent for me, but he is not here." Kate's heart clenched with recognition and sympathy. Another mail-order bride. Another man who had changed his mind or his circumstances. "I am Kate Bridger. Come with me. We will sort this out." She led Lucy to the general store now owned by a kind couple named Johnson, who had bought it when Pike's assets were liquidated. A few inquiries revealed that Robert Whitmore had left town 2 weeks ago, claiming urgent business in Denver. No one expected him to return. Lucy's face remained calm, but Kate saw her hands tremble. "I have no money for a return ticket. I sold everything to come here." Kate smiled gently. "Then welcome to Iron Creek, Lucy Chen. I know exactly how you feel. And I know that sometimes what seems like rejection is really redirection." She led Lucy to a bench outside the store and sat beside her. 7 years ago, I stood on that same platform. I'd come to marry a man who decided he did not want me after all. I was terrified, alone, without resources or hope. But someone helped me. Someone offered me a chance to prove myself, to build a new life on my own terms. Lucy looked at her with cautious hope. "What happened? I became a teacher. I fell in love with a man who valued me for who I was not, what I could provide. I helped build a community that has become my family, and now I have the chance to offer you what was offered to me." She explained about the school now needing an assistant teacher to help with the growing enrollment, about room and board with a kind family, about a community that valued hard work and good character over background or circumstance. "It will not be easy," Kate warned. "The work is demanding. The winters are harsh, and some people will judge you for being different, but if you are willing to try, willing to prove yourself, you will find a place here." Lucy was quiet for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders, and Kate saw in her face the same determination she had felt 7 years ago. "I am willing. I came west to start a new life. Perhaps this is the life I was meant to find." As they walked toward the school, Kate felt the circle complete itself. She had been rescued and given a chance. Now she could offer that same chance to another woman standing at a crossroads. That evening, Kate sat on the porch of the house she and Matt had built, watching their children play in the yard. Samuel, now 6, was teaching 4-year-old Rose to skip stones in the creek. Their laughter carried on the autumn air, sweet and clear. Matt emerged from the barn, his day's work done, and climbed the porch steps to sit beside her. They had done this countless times over the past 7 years, this quiet moment of togetherness at day's end. "Lucy Chen seems like she will do well," Matt observed. Kate had told him about the new teacher over supper. "You have a gift for seeing potential in people." "I learned from the best," Kate replied, taking his hand. "Someone once saw potential in a desperate woman on a train platform. That changed everything." Matt pressed a gentle kiss to her palm, a gesture that still sent warmth through her after all these years. "We changed each other. That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from blue to gold to purple. The mountains stood eternal against the horizon. The land spread out before them, familiar and beloved. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Pike had not rejected you?" Matt asked. "If you had married him as planned?" Kate considered the question seriously. "I think I would have been miserable, trapped in a life that diminished me rather than challenged me to grow. I would have had security perhaps, but not joy, not purpose, not love." She turned to look at her husband, this man who had saved her by offering not rescue, but partnership. "Every hard thing that happened, every moment of fear and uncertainty led me here, to you, to our children, to this life. I would not trade a single moment because every moment was necessary to arrive at this one." Matt pulled her close, and they sat together as darkness fell, wrapped in each other's arms, and the peace of a life well lived. Kate's voice was soft but firm when she spoke again. "I used to think my story was about being rejected, about being unwanted, but that was never the truth. My story is about being redirected to where I was always meant to be." She gestured to the valley, to the house they had built, to the children playing in the fading light. "I was never meant to be a mail-order bride who arrived at her destination. I was meant to be a woman who found her home by losing her way, who discovered her strength by facing her fears, who learned that sometimes the greatest blessing is being told no because it forces you to find your own yes." Matt smiled. "That is wisdom worth sharing. You should write that down for your students." "I will," Kate promised. "But first, I want to simply live it, here, with you, for as long as God grants us." The stars emerged one by one, ancient lights watching over a land still young and wild. Below them, Iron Creek settled into evening lights flickering in windows, smoke rising from chimneys, families gathering around tables for supper and stories. Kate thought of Lucy Chen sleeping tonight in a strange bed in a strange town, uncertain but hopeful. She thought of all the women who would come after seeking new lives in this hard, beautiful country. And she thought of the words she would write in the journal Dr. Blackwood had given her, words that future generations might read and understand. The West is not just a place, she would write. It is a promise, not of ease or comfort, but of possibility, of second chances, of the freedom to become who you were always meant to be if you have the courage to claim it. Matt stood extending his hand to help her rise. "Come inside, wife. Our children need to be tucked into bed. Our fire needs tending. Our life is waiting." Kate took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Together, they walked into their home, leaving the door open behind them so the mountain air could flow through, carrying with it the scent of sage and pine and promise. And somewhere in the distance, a train whistle sounded, bringing new dreamers to the territory. New stories waiting to unfold. New lives ready to begin. The circle would continue, Kate knew. Hope passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation. That was the true legacy, not land or wealth or buildings, but the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, even when all seemed lost, redemption was possible. Love was possible, home was possible. All you needed was the courage to say yes when life offered you a different path than the one you had planned. Kate had said yes. And in saying yes, she had found everything she had been searching for and more than she had ever dared to dream. The door closed softly behind them. Inside, warm lamplight glowed. Children's laughter echoed. A life built on love and courage and community continued. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, and the land that had witnessed so much pain and triumph settled into peaceful rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new stories. But tonight there was only gratitude, only love, only home.